Hello everyone, Daniel Hubatch here, www.firelessforge.shop. Welcome to the blog today. We're going to be covering how to do a basket weave on a auto-loader gun holster here today. But before I get started, I wanted to show everybody my leatherworking shop, which also doubles as my room. So I've got my desk behind me here. This is the main desk that I use for doing all of my leather stamping and for doing things like the riveting, anything that requires a lot of pounding and heavy work. I also carve my wands here. You can see that I actually have the piece of leather that we're going to be working with today all ready and set up to go with our tools and stuff. Right up here, I have my phone holder that I use for recording and plenty of light as well. That's very important. But yes, I carved my wands here. I cut a lot of leather here. This used to be my grandpa Skip's old desk, and it's quite heavy duty, and also quite scarred up. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. All right, and then over here in the other corner of my bedroom, I have got where I do all of my dyeing and my staining and stuff. You can see my dye and stain equipment is in this box right over here. And then I have all of my threads, my stamps, and my tools up against the wall right over here. And I've got my 222 electric guitar. I'm not a very good guitar player, but it's very therapeutic to sit down with the guitar for a little bit. Alright, so let's get this video started on how to do a basket weave stamp on a holster. Alright, so for this project, I'll go ahead and lay out the tools that you're going to need, according to how I'm going to do it. First, of course, you're going to need your leather. This is Veg Tanned Leather. Veg Tanned Leather means vegetable tanned, which refers to the tanning process in which they use tree bark, usually oak bark. You might also see this leather labeled as oak tanned, which is the same thing as vegetable tanned. Now, if you don't know, it's very, very important that you get veg tanned leather that is in its raw state, its unsealed state. Because I have made the mistake many times of picking up veg tanned leather that is pre-sealed, stuff that looks like veg tanned leather, but it's already been sealed, and so you can't use it for stamping. Once the leather is sealed, it will no longer accept stamping and molding, which is important, obviously, for what we're going to be doing. So this is 13 ounce thick, which is about a 1/4 inch thick, 13 ounce veg tanned leather. So that's important. You're of course going to need a hammer. Any kind of hammer will really do as long as it's light and you'll be able to operate it for long extended periods at a time, because you're going to be doing a lot of this and you don't want to have, a sledgehammer or something that's too heavy. A lot of times tooling hammers are either have a plastic head like this one, or sometimes they have a rawhide head or a wooden head. A chisel hammer will also work well for this. Of course, you will need your stamps, the most important one being the basket weave stamp. Now, every stamp has a serial number on the side of it, which you can use to find the exact stamp that you need. I bought these from Tandy Leather, that's tandyleather.com, and the model for this one is an X514S. Again, that's X514S. And so that's the stamp that you'll want. There are other designs for basket weave stamps, but this is the one that I like to use. Now, this is really the only thing you need for this project if you don't have tools for doing a border. I do have the tools for doing a border, and so I am going to do that. And for that, we're going to use a camouflage tool, which is what this kind of seashell-shaped one is called. And the serial number on that is Z-C431. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch smooth face beveler. This is a Z-8197. And finally, an extra little tool that I like to use for laying things out. You don't need it, you can use a pencil or something similar. This is called a stylus, and the serial number on this is 8059. I am also going to be using a ruler. Any ruler will work. Any straight edge at all actually will work. And this is just for setting ourselves up properly so we get a nice straight basket weave. And of course you will need water and a sponge. Don't worry, your water doesn't have to look as crummy as mine, but if it does, I won't judge you. Another important tool is a cup of coffee. Now I forgot one other thing. Now, the surface I'm stamping on right here is pretty hard and stable, but not only do you want something hard and stable to be stamping on, but it also helps to have a block of something. Marble is really good, but I have this here metal block for doing jewelry, and it also doubles very well for this. We just set that underneath the area that we are going to stamp, and that results in a harder, firmer, easier stamp. Alright, so the first stage in the process here is getting the leather wet, which is why we need the water and the sponge. I'm going to go ahead, and my sponge has been soaking in here. I'm going to squeeze out a lot of that water. I don't need a lot in there quite yet. So, there is a certain amount of water that you want in your leather. And that has to do with several things. Has to do with how thick the leather is, has to do with what the humidity level in your house is, and it also has to do with what you're doing with the leather. So in my house, it's winter, we burn wood, it's pretty darn dry in here right now, so I know that I have to put quite a bit of moisture into this piece of leather. This is also a very thick piece of leather at 13 ounces, so I will wet both the front side of it and the back side of it, and I want to get it fairly wet here. So we're going to go ahead and start that. It's a sign that your leather is good, it's good quality, and it's good for stamping. If it soaks in, or if it sucks in the water like that real fast, darkens up good. That's a sign of good leather. We're going to flip to the other side, and we're going to get that damp as well. I'm not trying to soak it, but I know that it has to be fairly wet, given the conditions and the size. Now, on a thick piece of leather like this, you want to do both sides. On thinner pieces of leather, like 8 ounces and less, you can just do it on the face side, and then you're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let this air for a little bit. You don't want to start stamping it when it's dark like this. What you want to do is you want to wait for it to start to come back to its natural color. So we're going to let this sit for a little bit until I think it's ready, and then I will test it. Alright, so the leather is beginning to return to its natural shade in a few spots here. So I'm going to take my camouflage tool here, and I'm going to test it on this back edge. I'm testing it back here because this isn't very visible, and I just want to see if the leather is ready to accept a stamp yet. And it is. Now you can tell if leather is ready to take stamping if you get a real nice, sharp stamp, and the inside of the stamp is nice and dark. And that will tell you that your leather is ready to go, and you can go ahead and stamp it. If at any time you start to lose this look while you're stamping, then it means you need to add more moisture, and given the dryness of my house, I'm sure that I'm going to have to add more moisture along the way here. So now the border that I'm going to build onto this is going to alternate the camouflage tool and the beveling tool. So I'm going to set my beveler up to the edge of the camouflage tool mark, tap it into there, and then I'm just going to alternate these all the way around. Alrighty, there we go. That's the entire border stamped. I know that I didn't stamp along this edge over here, but I do not need to. That is going to be up against your side, up against your hip, and nobody's going to see that anyway, so there's no point in wasting time stamping that out as well. If you want to, then go ahead and do it. Okay, so the leather has gotten pretty dried out, so I'm going to add another layer of moisture to the top here. And just in the necessary region, which is the inside of our stamping area here. Add a little bit to the back as well. Okay, so now the straight edge or ruler and your stylus or whatever you've got to mark some lines with comes into play. What we need to do is we need to create guidelines for ourselves so that we know where we need to go with the stamps, and this is what keeps the basket weave straight and looking good. First of all, I'm going to create this edge line by following the holes for the belt slot right here. Drawing a light line into the leather so that it will go away in the end, because we don't want to go too hard with that, otherwise it'll stay there. Now we have a couple different options as to what direction we want the basket weave to go in. We could go straight up and down, we could go side to side, or we can take an angle. And taking an angle, to me, I've always had the best experience with taking an angle. I think that looks the best. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to run my straight edge or my ruler from this corner to this top corner over here by the stitch hole. Line those up and score a line across there. Now this provides us with the basic guideline for where we need to go from here in order to create a nice, straight, symmetrical basket weave. Make sure that you've got your block underneath here. You'll need your hammer now and your basket weave stamp. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to start on the bottom. And we're going to use, this is how you use this line to make a straight basket weave. I'm going to take the edge of my stamp, the long edge of my stamp here, and I'm going to line those corners up on top of that line. I don't want to go over the line, I just want to be on top of it. I mean, I don't want to go past the line, I just want to be on top of it. Now I'm going to roll the stamp from this inside corner to this outside corner. There we go. That's the first stamp put in place. Now what we need to do is we need to alternate our way going back and forth all the way up to the corner up here, and then that will give us a line off of which to work out to the sides and fill up the rest of this area with basket weave stamping. And that's the easy part. This is the slightly more difficult part that you really got to pay attention with so that you get everything right. Now with the basket weave stamp, we need to go ahead and place one of these bars. You'll see that there are 4 bars on this guy, and you take one of those bars and you match it into the same slot as the other stamp. And you make sure that these 2 right here are lined up and going straight forward, following this line, following the guideline. We're going to do the same thing, and we're going to work away from the inside edge of that stamp to the outside. There we go. And you can see that this one went a little bit deeper. We can probably, after we're done setting this and giving ourselves a guideline, we'll go back through here again and we'll get them nice and deep so that they look very professional and so that it gives the right impression. But that's about how they're going to look at the end. We're going to flip this around again and we're going to keep on alternating, making sure that we're lining everything up as we go. As you can see, I'm carefully setting the stamp along the inside of that and double checking it. I often like to lift it up and then double check, make sure I'm going in the right place before I keep stamping. Because once you inlay something into that leather, you're not going to get it back out again. And another way that you can help make sure that you're staying in alignment is see how I'm putting that mark right there on those 2 bar lines. I'm checking to see the distance between those 2 on the one side and make sure that they're close enough together. See, I check it right there. So you can go through as you're doing that and visually check to make sure that they're going to be the right distance apart, because if you're careful enough, you are setting yourself up for success right here. As long as you have all this aligned properly, then it'll go good. All right, as you can see, we have our center line now all set up. This is the simple part. After this is just expanding this out to the sides, and that's what we're going to step into doing next. And we're just going to be lining up our stamp with the corners right here of each link. It's like putting together a chain. As you can see, that slides in there just like that, and then we'll roll that out and stamp it into place. And you can kind of see the definition that it creates behind just from that light push, and we're going to stamp that into place, and we're going to do that across the entire thing, expanding out to the sides, which is going to create that fully basket weave stamped look that we want. Notice here how I move the leather more than I move the tool itself. So as I have to get different angles on it and stuff, always be moving the leather. That's when you go to tool or cut anything, you want to move the thing that you're working on, not so much move the tool, if that makes sense. You can see me kind of working on the border here and doing some blending. We're going to talk about blending in a little bit here, but that's part of the finishing process that makes it all come together nicely. By the way, all of the guitar work here that we're hearing in the background was guitar work I was doing while the leather was drying. The mic was still on, so it recorded it, and I just thought I'd share that. I'm not a very good guitarist, but there you go, I'm putting myself out there. So here we are in an important final stage of the process. We have all of the stamping done on the inside of our stamped area, and now we have to finish up the edges where you have that transition point from the basket weave stamping to the border that you've made or just to the edge of the holster. And a lot of times this requires using the stamping tool partially, so you're going to use maybe half of it, maybe you'll use a short half, maybe you'll use the long half, but what you do is you carefully hold it at an angle, and the situation that you're looking at, the space that you're trying to tool, determines what angle you hold that at. And you can see me right here going around the edge of the holster, making sure that everything is kind of blended together and that I'm not leaving any stamps just kind of hanging out there half done. So yeah, you just have to experiment with that, and most of the time you're going to be going at it with angles. You're not going to use a whole stamp, you're just going to use parts of the stamp. And here I'm just going through and putting a finished border on the edge of that, just using the camouflage tool just for a more finished look. Alrighty, so there we are, a successful basket weave stamp put into there. It took me about, I think about an hour, a little bit less than an hour to do this total, including the time it took to wait for it to dry a little bit between stamping. But you can see here that we got a successful stamp. It looks pretty darn straight to my eye. I can see a couple of them that are off just a little bit, but that's just being an artisan. You tend to notice things like that. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed that video. Please feel free to leave any comments. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, feel free to always come back to my blog or follow me on Etsy, and you will always receive updates on the latest shop news, including blog posts and special offers and new listings. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.